Good morning, everybody. If you're milling about in the hall, please come in. We're going to get started. All right, well, let me bring up the last official speaker of the conference this morning. You guys know that a little bit later this morning, we'll have the panel discussion where if not all of the speakers will be up here, and you guys can come up and ask questions. But this morning I have the honor of introducing our final speaker. He is a mechanical designer by trade and a technical artist who identifies as an experiencer of the UFO abduction phenomenon and has been involved in various levels of research in pursuit of the answer to the question, are we alone? He attended Emily Carr University of Arts and Design, took mechanical drafting and modeling animation courses using Autodesk 3ds at British Columbia Institute of Technology. And he is going to use CGI artwork to recount how he discovered and uncovered his abduction experiences. Please join me in welcoming Chad Wanless.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So that's me on the left, and my wife on the right. All right, so my presentation is basically based off the book that I have written up, and my wife has so graciously helped me write. I wrote it 4 times over the last 20 years, and the first 3 were terrible, and the fourth and final was really well done, and it took everything for her to help me get it in a really readable state. All right, so just a bit of housekeeping information. This information presented in this presentation is solely the opinion of the presenter and does not represent any opinion of my current or past employers. It's my employers made me put that in there. Some of the photos were taken, purchased from iStockPhoto.com. Maps were provided by Google. Fair use notice for some photos and artwork and video clips are for educational purposes only. It's a copyright issue thing. Okay, basically, I'm breaking this presentation down into introduction, hypnosis, tried and failed, didn't work all that well for me. I discovered something new called EMDR. I also learned I have PTSD, and then finally I get into the discussion of the evidence that I've uncovered during my research. And with this bright light, I wish I had my hat. So he's already given me my introduction here. What I will say, as a mechanical designer, I'm actually trained in 8 CAD programs. So that's usually about 7 more than most CAD designers. And then I do have a website, true-experiences.ca, and the book will be uploaded to Amazon within a week or 2 from the state. And this is the cover. You can see the gray on the right-hand side. That is a recreation of one incident that I had happened to me. And then the bonus material down the bottom, where it's discovery of the 6th observable. So within this presentation, in the book, I document 6 missing time events. 2 while walking home, 1 while driving home, 3 while at home, 2 while walking to the bathroom. 1 terrified my cat. And 1 was witnessed by my former partner. And these are all documented within my book. In this case, the last one, I was the very thing missing. I had no idea that there was missing time involved. I disappeared from the apartment. Okay, so where I grew up, this is kind of important. People often ask, why you? What makes you so special? Well, I grew up in the Northwest, Pacific Northwest, over about here, in a little village called Lions Bay. It's down here, and this is the mountain above. It's the very definition of isolated. The population of the town was about 1,000. There wasn't a lot of children for them to pick, and I was the unlucky child. So another view of it. This is it here. My house was somewhere down in this area. And this was the view from the house. And that was how old I was when I had my first experience. So what made me come to realize I was an experiencer? I had a very large number of events happen to me from age 3 to 18 where I had missing time, or odd, weird things happen, or I'd see a UFO, but I didn't know what any of it meant. In the 70s and early 80s, they didn't tell us anything about missing time. It was just being discovered at that time. So it wasn't any literature that we knew about as a child or a teen, so I had no clue what any of this meant. But what had happened was, it was 1991, I was watching Married with Children, the episode Married with ... aliens, and Al was sitting in his bed, and this green alien popped it through the open window, and this image terrified me, and I didn't know why. And basically, I was dumbfounded. I had to turn that TV off. I couldn't watch it. So within about a week, I wound up going to one of the local bookstores, found the book Missing Time, and started reading it. And the third chapter was the first experiencer, and the fellow describes something, and then it began a flood of memories coming back to me. All these events as a child suddenly made sense, and I was just terrified. So I wound up contacting MUFON, a local chapter called UFO BC. They arranged a hypnosis session for me. The therapist asked me if there was any dreams or screen memories I had. I said, yes, there was one particular one where what I thought was a witch came into my room. And we wound up floating through the ceiling. Above the house was this disc that enormous, like 200 feet in diameter, and it lit up the whole area like it was day, and then there was this 3 little gray people standing down the base of the road looking at the vegetation for some reason. But because we had floated through the ceiling, this was magic, and I thought, well, witches have magic, it must be a witch. So it came in the room, said we have to go, floated through the ceiling, and this was the disc that I saw over top of the house. So during the hypnosis session, I settled in the recliner. She guided me through the relaxation phase, asked me to recall the scene, and this is what came. This gray alien shape, perfectly silhouetted by the blue light coming in from the window on the far side, and I couldn't see its face. So she says to me, on the count of 3, you're going to remember. 1, 2, 3, and she snapped her fingers. Suddenly, I basically went into a seizure. It was like the strobe light was going off in my eyes, and I was physically shaken. I just about fell out of the chair. I could not remember anymore. I was basically done. I had tried hypnosis after that several times. Every single time, the scenes were completely blurred. I could tell exactly what was going on around me, what was being said to me, but I couldn't see a thing. My subconscious was too terrified to let me see anything. So about 20 years later, moved to a new town, came across a therapist who had her own UFO witness encounter, and I thought, here's a person I can go see. It's really hard to find a sympathizing therapist, so I lucked out in this case. She recommended a new technique called EMDR. It stands for eye movement desensitization and reionization. So basically, it's confident that it would help me with the trauma of the experiences. This is a long description by Ashley Judd. I'll let you read it. She had her own, not UFO experiences, but childhood trauma. Now, EMDR is usually used for any kind of trauma, doesn't matter what the source is. In her particular case, she gave a really good description of how EMDR helped her through her childhood trauma. And so it was recommended for me to try this. Now, the way this works is you think eye movement. The original method was with eyes, moving your eyes, but they also found other techniques working just as well. This is a TheraTapper. Basically, it's 2 little vibrators. You put one in each palm, and they alternate between left and right. And for some reason, and no one knows how, this prompts the subconsciousness into processing trauma. So 2 memories emerged, clear memories emerged, that I knew about these events, but I couldn't remember what happened after the initial moments. So I was 6 years old. I went downstairs to go to bed, and as I was walking through the family room, I noticed something in the sky caught my eye. What I saw was a Saturn-shaped craft, the orange body and red rings, hovering, floating up in the sky, and at 6, I thought, wow, that must be Saturn up in the sky, because that's all I could think of what it was. So I get to my bedroom, I look out again, and now the craft is floating in front of the ocean. And I was dumbfounded. I'm thinking, okay, I must be seeing the reflection of Saturn off the ocean. And then I laid down, and I thought, you know what, I want to have one more look. So I got up and I looked out, and this time it was floating in front of the mountain. And I thought, how am I seeing Saturn through the mountain? That was the end of the memory. I'd always assumed that I just laid down and gone to sleep. But during the EMDR session, as I'm sitting there, I heard this door creak out in the hallway, and it reminded me of a movie, which reminded me of this very scene. And behind me, my door creaked open, and this gray walked in. And this is the memory that came out under EMDR. And I looked at this. I wasn't scared, but I was kind of dumbfounded. And this gray says to me, "You're not scared of me?" And I said, "No, you're a space alien. How cool is that?" So she says to me, "You want to come out and check out my spaceship?" I'm like, "Sure." It was like going to Disneyland for a 5-year-old or 6-year-old, right? So the memory gets blurry. We float up to the craft. I'm placed on an examination table, and all I'll say is, at that point, I realized I had been robbed of this great tour, and now I was a guinea pig, and I didn't like what they were doing to me. So the second memory that came forward was actually the next week. Now, this was an event that I knew of, but I never remembered the in-between. I left work. I was 16 years old. Left work at 11 o'clock at night exactly. This is a map from Google showing lower right where I was working, and to my destination, the Lions Bay up in the middle of the Howe Sound, it's called. So it's a 25-minute drive normally. When I arrived home, my alarm clock said it was 2:30 in the morning, and I did not know why. And my initial thought, I was angry at my brother. I thought, that jerk, he's messed around with my alarm clock. He's going to make me wake up early in the morning as a prank. So I head upstairs, and I get up there, and all the clocks agreed it's 2:30 in the morning. And I was like, how did this time disappear again? At that time, I'd known of the other events, and I just assumed there was some phenomena of nature where time would skip or jump, and I had no idea why. Well, in this EMDR session, I remembered what had happened during that drive. So this is basically what the road looked like on my drive home. It's not too dissimilar from the ride we got from the airport to here. We went along the lake where there's no shoulder. And in this case, there's a sheer cliff on one side and a sheer cliff drop to the next side. And down here, this is what the road looks like from a view. They've twinned it since I moved away, but it was considered Canada's most dangerous highway to drive. About 2 to 3 times a year, someone would disappear on this highway, not abducted. They would fall off the edge and go down here. And so about once a year, a helicopter would spot a car wedged up into the trees. And the event that I'm about to remember actually happened over here. So I was driving along. And now the memory comes back. My car suddenly, and in and of its own accord, decided to stop, pulled itself over to the right side, and just shut off. And I'm like, this is weird. And my car broke down. And then I noticed what I thought was the moon off to my left, until the moon started moving. And then it came over, and it hovered just in front of my car, and I was getting quite perplexed and spooked. So then something on my right-hand peripheral vision moved, and I was like, oh my God, what's that? And I got real scared. And then I looked to my left, and literally about 2 feet, I was face to face with a gray. And it scared the hell out of me. So then the gray tried to open the door, and we began this tug of war on the door. I was not getting out of that car. So then this gray steps back, and the disc comes over and pulls my car up into it, magnets, whatever, it doesn't matter. So up into the car I go. I wind up in this, I call it the landing bay or garage. They've always been prepared for dealing with vehicles and people like myself. My car door swings open, I get ejected sideways, and I fall on the ground. I'm in this quivering ball of terror. And this gray comes over and starts consoling me. It projects its calm emotions on me and says, it's okay, we just want to visit with you, we're not going to hurt you, and repeated that several times, and I finally settled down. As I got up, and I was able to, at that point, I was settled down and I had a good view of the hallway. And I remember this very distinctly. There was no point sources for the lighting. The walls looked like spun aluminum or brushed aluminum. There were no right angles. Everything was curved. Only gentle compounding curves. It's an engineering term. Both horizontally and vertically. Okay, so then another 10 years goes by, and I decide, I knew I had PTSD, but I didn't have an official diagnosis. So things like, I can't stand to have my touch back. Someone pokes me in the back to say hi, I'm like, ah, so react terribly. Car headlights, if they flash into the living room at night, terrifies the hell out of me. Certain things like that. So I had to go into the doctor's office to get a small lesion removed from my right leg. I was laying on the medical table, and every time he touched me to clean it or anything, my whole body would jerk up off the table. I was reacting, and I was reacting badly. And so halfway through this procedure, this memory flashback comes back to me. I'm lying on a table, same position, and there's these grays, and they're running around as fast as they can, preparing the next set of examination procedures. And I was so traumatized by this, I couldn't walk or leave for about an hour and a half from the doctor's office. Then I decided it was time to go and see someone I knew, a professional psychologist, to get an official PTSD diagnosis. So he's actually a good friend of mine from church. I knew he was skeptical, but I was confident that my story would get past his skepticism, and that our friendship would endure. So I told him I was an experiencer. Then I showed him my render, and he was absolutely shocked. First, he thought it was a photograph. I said, no, it's a 3D recreation of what exactly I saw one time. And the whole event is in the book. And then he said, I'd always assumed that people had confabulated ordinary but strange experiences to be something more. I never imagined that someone would actually have claimed to see an alien. And so that's the realization that came to him. He had this assumption that was erroneous. And when someone like myself corrected him, he was able to take his erroneous assumption and go, I was wrong, I can change my mind. All right, so then I told him about an experience I had with my then ex-wife. I woke up late one night. I was wide awake, and that's actually a bad sign. If you're wide awake, the experience is most likely going to happen. It's like you're on. The experience I would say it'd be like having 3 or 4 of those Red Bull drinks. Like you're that awake. you're on high alert. And I had this urge to get up and walk into the living room. I'm like, nope, I am not moving. And then suddenly I felt like I had to go to the washroom, intense pressure on my bladder. I thought, okay, phew, it's just the bathroom. Okay, I'll go to the washroom. There was an ensuite here, but I decided I was going to go to the far room so that I wouldn't disturb my partner. When I get back, the bedroom light was on. I walk through the door and she screams at me, "Where have you been? You've been gone for an hour and a half." And I was completely oblivious to this hour and a half. I'm like, "What are you talking about? I've been gone for a minute and a half at most." "No, you've been gone for an hour and a half." And so we went back and forth a couple times, and then she finally says to me, "You don't think you were abducted, dude?" And I'm like, "Well, it's been a minute and a half for me. If you say it's been an hour and a half, that's the only explanation I can think of." Like, we lived in a unique condo building. I could not walk outside because there was an open air atrium in my underwear and not be frozen solid by the downpouring rain of Vancouver winter. All right, so I went over my fears and phobias, all the different unique ones. Like when I was a kid, I'd be walking outside at night and I'd feel terrified of being seen from above, but as soon as I walked underneath the carport, I was fine. I couldn't be seen from above, I was safe. I always knew that fear, but I didn't know what it meant. I went over the things like couldn't stand to be touched. I described an experience as like watching Shark Week. There was one particular episode where these biologists were catching sharks, putting them up on this platform on the side of the boat, shove a tube down its throat, wash seawater over it, then spend the next 5 minutes running around as fast as they can, taking blood samples, ultrasounding it, see if it's pregnant, measuring it, all these other things. Then they'd release it back and they'd high-five each other and say, "Yeah, that was a great one." That's what the experience is like. As an experiencer, you are an interesting scientific subject only. And the fact that they rush around and try and get everything done as quickly as possible to keep you as disturbed as little as possible does, for some like myself, cause certain PTSD symptoms and reactions. So basically what happened in my case, I was diagnosed with PTSD and tactile defensiveness. The doctor told me, the psychologist told me, your autonomic nervous system has learned that touch is dangerous. And so growing up, I was only ever poked and prodded, so my system learned touch was dangerous. So the muscles under my skin would seize up and cramp up in defense, and it was excruciatingly painful. So he recommended I do EEG brain scan and neurofeedback, as well as a book called The Body Keeps the Score, which is all about PTSD. So I went in, got my brain scan done. They use electrodes for measuring. This is not me, but this is a sample photograph from iPhoto, iStock photo. And basically they hook up all these electrodes to your head. They then map your brain activity with your eyes closed, your eyes open, a bunch of different techniques and things they do, watching certain things on the screen, stuff like that. They're looking for PTSD registers, very distinct registers. So my psychologist afterwards came back and she said, "There is absolutely no doubt you have a PTSD brain." That's the exact quote. Typically, the human brain functions at 16 to 20 hertz from front to back. In my case, I was running at 20 to 24. My brain was basically running super fast on super high alert. And that's an absolute classic PTSD register. So then I began 48 neurofeedback sessions. It's basically you get strapped up to the same electrodes, and then you basically try and control a video game, and it's all about trying to take the parts of your brain that are, they use the term bottlenecked, just to put it in layman's terms for me, but it trains your brain to function more normally and to help it slow down. And then I did one more session after the 48 to confirm that there was some healing that happened, which it did. So some of my fears, my tactile offensiveness lessened, my phobias lessened, and it did help. But officially, I can say I had 50 brain scans. There's no doubt I have PTSD. Okay, now we're getting into, it's in the details. What are experiencers? Why are they important? What have they witnessed? What is the value in their reports? What can engineering say of their descriptions? And there's common characteristics among all experiencers of what they describe seeing on board. They see, including things that I saw, spun or brushed aluminum or titanium, some kind of metal description is usually there. There's always smooth curving walls. There's never any seams seen. There's lighting, but there's no point source. They don't know why. This is the oldest account I could find. So I've highlighted the descriptions. This was from 1977. She describes spun aluminum with no visible light sources. This is another one from a book published in the early 90s. Curved interior walls, rounded, no seams. White light, could not see where the light was coming from. This was from the book Abduction by John Mack. The lady described brushed aluminum, and he says himself is the experiencers often describe walls that are curved. There's kind of an atmosphere, often misty inside. So on the left is an image created by Mike Cleland. William had mentioned him doing artwork for his book. Last year I saw him speak, and he showed this image, and I asked him for a copy and permission to reproduce, which he was very happy to do so. So these are two artistic renders, one by him, one by myself. Both of them are essentially the same, except the hallway length is shorter. So, and then for a description of the dissimilarities here, this is where we're getting into the technical part of the architecture of the interior of the craft. People describe brushed aluminum, you see it here, but with 3D printing, and I used the smallest part photo I could find, you can see these little striations in the 3D print. All printers do the striation. The finer the additive layer, the finer the striations, but you're always going to see them, especially on a curved surface. And those interiors are all curved surfaces. So the reason why myself and others, I'm not the first to say this, that the interiors are 3D printed is, I've already said all this stuff. Right angles, here is an important part. Right angles are a structural weakness. So by building in these complex curves, it's kind of like your kitchen stainless steel bowl. The raw metal, the sheet metal, you could bend it with your hands, every last one of you. But as soon as it's curved into that complex curve, every last one of you could stand on it and it wouldn't bend. So the curve drastically increases the strength. So the interior architecture is also the structural framework for the craft. So 3D printing explains the parabolic curves, the no seams, the compounded curvatures. It's called unibody construction techniques. It maximizes the overall strength while minimizes the material required. And then there's the no visible lighting. So in the 80s and the 70s when all this was reported, none of this made sense. You can't build a place with no seams and curved walls made out of brushed aluminum. It's impossible. And same with the lighting. There's no way to light a room without a light source. Well, there was, but we didn't know it at the time. Can a room be lit without light bulbs? The answer turns out is yes. The 21st century answer is electroluminescent paint or film. At that time, we had it for watches, car dashboards. But it's advanced enough. You can see here, this is a car painted, and the entire body of the car is lit. There's no, other than the headlights and the taillights for safety, the whole thing is self-illuminating. There's another example of a film. This is a film applied to someone's outdoor patio countertop. And so, again, no point source. And the advantage for someone traveling here is no light bulbs are required. There's no hardware store they can go to get a light replacement. So by using this technique, they don't have to worry about burned out bulbs. All right, so the new discovery, this is something I discovered about 2 months ago, and it's all about the UAP's visible propulsion system. When you watch things like Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick saying there's no visible form of propulsion, there is. We just didn't know how to look for it. We didn't know how to see it or recognize it. I'm going to teach you how to recognize it. All right, so before we go into that, I need to talk about inattentive blindness and learning to pay attention. This is why we haven't seen it before. People focus on the smallest details, but you can only focus on one detail at a time, essentially. It means you're often missing obvious things, you're not paying attention to the right things. So basically, we're not that good at spotting unexpected events. So this is the monkey business illusion. This is an example of why people have a hard time spotting details that are not obvious. So we're going to watch a little video, and there's a number of players, some wearing white shirts, some wearing black shirts, and the video is going to ask us to count the number of times the white players dressed in white bounce the balls.
The monkey business illusion. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball. The correct answer is 16 passes. Did you spot the gorilla? For people who haven't seen or heard about a video like this before, about half missed the gorilla. If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it. But did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game? Let's rewind and watch it again. Here comes the gorilla, and there goes a player, and the curtain is changing from red to gold. When you're looking for a gorilla, you often miss other unexpected events.
Okay. So this is basically a prime example of why we're not seeing the propulsion system effects, because we didn't know what to watch for, and we're busy watching the craft itself. What did it look like? Oh, it looks like this, it looks like that. And you're not paying attention to the surroundings. That's what it's got to do with UAPs. So to go into what is going on with UAP propulsion and how to spot it, we actually need to go into an astronomical anomaly called gravitational lensing. So gravitational lensing, often called Einstein rings now, they were first photographed by Hubble in 1998. They are large structures surrounding distant galaxies. Essentially what's going on is you have a galaxy here, and you have a galaxy on the other side from our viewpoint. So, and I've added these curves in here to represent how space is being curved by the galaxy itself. So space gets contracted closer to the galaxy and expands farther away from the galaxy. And that's how gravity works. It's kind of like the lever effect. As it pulls this way, the objects are pushed towards where it's concentrated and away from where it's expanded. So what's going on is the light from this far quasar, in this case, leaves this way, gets bent around through the gravitational, this curved space, Basically, gravity is pulling it back, and it comes back towards us. And what we see is this little ring around here, and this dot, these 4 dots are the center of the galaxy, shown 4 times. So this is what gravitational lensing is the physical curvature of the space causes light passing through it to bend in a direction that you normally wouldn't see it go. So the very first time this was photographed was actually in 1919, and it was what was proved Einstein's theory of general relativity correct. He said that the light of stars bending around the sun would actually appear farther away from the sun than normally would be expected. So they went out and they photographed this, and you can see the little blue lines indicating how far those stars were out of position from where they were supposed to be. So gravitational lensing is not a theory, it is fact. There's no debate that curved space will bend light. So this is an animation of a black hole going across in front of a galaxy, and you can see the curvature causing the distortion of the background galaxy. Why is this relevant? Animation is a clue. It has implications for the Alcubierre warp drive. Also has implications for the alternate theory of what Mark presented yesterday with the KK gravitons. In both cases, both theories say that the space gets curved. So in Alcubierre's warp drive theory, he basically introduces there's a ring on the outside with positive and negative energy, which is normal energy and dark energy. And then in the center, you have this occupation pod. That's the safe place for an occupant to be during high warp. Now, some other people have done some work on it. NASA's Eagle laboratory, Alexei and Gianni, these two guys worked on warp drive. And then by accident, it was discovered in this paper as well. Micro warp bubbles were discovered. So basically what's going on is you have a crew compartment at the center. It's flat, safe place for the people to occupy. It resembles an ellipsoid football shape type thing. And then the space-time curvature causes the occupants and the craft to simultaneously fall forward or up. If you had no windows and you were moving, you would have no idea that you're moving. It's not like a car where the car pushes you and then you sit still and then it pushes on your back and you move forward. You fall forward at the exact same rate as the craft does. That's why they can accelerate so quickly without crushing the occupants. So there's no G-force feeling. So how to deal with the construction of something like this? This is where my engineering part gets into. You got two functional parts shown in the diagrams, but they never actually bothered to try to describe how you would build something like this. Do you connect the ring with spokes or spires? What about cargo? What about engineering? What about a power source or science labs? Where does all that fit? It doesn't fit in the cockpit. It's got to go somewhere. So what you do, you fill in the ring. And what happens when you fill in the ring? It happens to look exactly like a disk UAP. It's, in my opinion, absolutely no accident that the UAP disks that we are seeing look exactly like they do. In both examples, the Alcubierre, I know I'm mispronouncing it, or the acceleration ring, there's a ring that goes around, you fill it in, you've got an engineering compartment on the other side, you've got cargo and science compartments on the outside, you've got a pilot's dome on top, and a safe spot in between for high high-speed maneuvers. So how does this affect UAPs? Going back, we have the diagram for the gravitational lensing. Now, in the case of a UAP, you have instead of a symmetric spatial bend, you have an asymmetric spatial bend. Basically, the space below the craft is expanded out, the space just above is compressed, and that causes that lever effect to cause the craft to fall up, or even just to fall at the same rate as gravity, so that it's staying still and hovering. So what would happen if one of these craft moves in front of, say, a building? The light coming from this edge would come down here, bend up, and go to the vantage point, and the same with above, but it'll be a smaller, closer bend here. So it's bending the light around itself. Now, if it was passing in front of a building, this is what the building would look like. The roof line would be momentarily bent. And then when it passes, it would return to normal display. So is this, can we detect this? Videos, yes. Photographs, no. You need to see multiple frames to see the change to be able to show it, especially with clouds. The vast majority of the videos I found, they're passing in front of clouds. And the one video I found where it's passing in front of a building. So again, going back to the monkey business illusion, we were focusing on the wrong things. We were looking at the shape of the craft and not what was directly around the craft. That's why no one ever noticed it. I spotted it because in my profession as a designer, I'm constantly checking my own work and the work of my coworkers. I'm looking for things that are wrong, out of place. And I spotted in one video something about the cloud behind a UFO. And then I thought, oh, that looks like an Einstein ring. And the more I looked, the more Einstein rings I found. So you can only watch it in extreme slow motion. Normal speed, it just goes by too fast. So you have to concentrate on the background objects. And the UAP shape itself is irrelevant. It doesn't matter if it's a disc, a cube, a round, if it's clear, if it's fuzzy. It doesn't make any difference. What matters is the background objects being changed. That's how you identify a true UAP versus someone's fake. And you have to have a background object. So if it's a blue sunny sky, it's useless. You can't verify the sky changing because it's all one color. So so this one here is the Agadila Puerto Rico UAP event. It's an IR video. It was leaked to the public. The Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies looked at it. And I've uploaded, I took the video from YouTube that they uploaded, and I've basically slowed it down. This is their link, not my link. I will be uploading it to YouTube. But you can see multiple gravitational events here. So this is normal speed. It was too fast to see the lensing event, so we're going to slow it down in slow motion. You can see it here. You can see as it's passing in front of these linear lines, the lines are being warped by the object in front of it. I'm going to slow it down even more, and this will be extreme slow motion. And it's these black lines coming up that are actually the more prominent ones. This one here actually bends aside and breaks. So then I've got a video here. Here's the line before it passes, here as it's passing, and here's in front of it. And then same with this one. When it passes in front of here, you can see some, there's even a break right there. So this is another part of the video, and it's passing in front of a building. So again, slowing it down. So you can see here the effect it's having. This one's even more interesting. The building actually bends one way, then bends another way. And this one's even more interesting. This one is, you can see down here, the building roof line is bending down out of the way of the craft. Here, right there, you can see it. And so I've paused for effect, and then resuming. And then going back to this gravitational black hole animation, notice the building line looks identical in shape. And it even has the little lens flare. Again, I don't think this is a coincidence. Now, I know that some will argue that this could be two things, either a lens problem or a compression issue, but because the curvature is increasing as it passes in front of that roof line, I can't see this as being either one. So there's another one coming up here. So I'm just reviewing over here the brake line, showing the curvature again. Now the next one was a dark cube within a sphere. Now Ryan Graves in his congressional hearing talked about this. Apparently 30-odd military and civilian pilots had reported this small UAP, 5 to 10 feet in diameter. One pilot did capture it, a pilot named Caesar, no last name given. He was flying over Medellin, Colombia. He was in an Airbus A320S at 29,700 feet, and the video he captured matches Ryan Gray's description perfectly. So this is the video, and I've broken down just some parts of it. So this is him. He has since taken it down from his Twitter account. I think he closed his Twitter account, but he was looking outside. The video, it didn't show up clear enough yet, so then he zipped down to get the altitude, and then now you can see this little UAP flying in here. So I'm going to magnify this and put it in extreme slow motion. And you'll notice there will be bending of the clouds around it as it's passing in front of them. And that's why I have the gravitational lensing example up in the top right corner for a comparison. There's two particular events as it passes in front of clouds that are horizontal. Either vertical or horizontal cloud is ideal for it to pass in front so you can actually see the bending. And I've done, this is 15% speed, this is at 8% speed, and you can see here, down here, the cloud is distorted quite severely just as it finishes passing. So repeat it again, just in case you weren't able to catch it the first time. Now I did adjust the brightness and contrast for this room so it would stand out better, because I knew with these lights it would be hard to see. So. This is the next area where it's passing from another horizontal cloud. Two, actually. Slowing it down to 15% speed. And then one more lensing event I'm showing here. Be up in a second. This is a little farther along in the video than before. It's passing in front of this cloud. That's the interesting part. And you can see I've outlined it here. As it's passing in front, it bulges out, and as it's passed, it's really bulging out here. And one last pass at it, 3% speed. Okay. So just re-highlighting it here. Same with these ones here. What I liked about this one is it was the cloud was pulled down quite a distance and then it bounces back. All right. Now there's a difference between the small unmanned UAP and then the larger discs, which most likely have pilots. Now, for these ones, I had to break it down frame by frame. I didn't have a chance to put a video together like this. But essentially what I noticed was instead of a curvature that's continuous, the bottom, the cloud below the craft was vibrating left and right. So this is the video itself.
There's some kind of object that's suspended in the air. It's hard to tell. It's pretty small. I cannot see it outside of my eyes.
Now, this was a leaked video, anonymously uploaded. I have no idea where it came from or who uploaded it. So.
1-1 of a targeting pod. You can see something. I can't tell if it's metallic or what. And there's, I can see like lines coming down below, but I can't see anything below it.
They are debating if they're seeing a weather balloon or not through the whole thing. So him and the other pilot, I guess, would be in behind him.
It's pretty small. I don't know, size of like a...
So he turned around and was doing a second pass, trying to see it. Looking outside, it's kind of like a blackish, I'm going to call it like a container. I can't really tell though what the shape is. It's so slow and so small and you can't see it because it's so close. I'd honestly be worried about hitting it before you know it was there. So here he is turning around one last time. And then they're now below it and trying to catch up to it. Okay. So it's an interesting video. When I first saw it, I didn't know what to make of it. One of my friends said it was too crisp and clear. Can't be real. If it's too blurry, it's not real. It's not good enough. If it's too crisp and clear, well, it's got to be fake, you know. And so as I go through it here, I'll snap through it. So I'll go back a little bit. So there's this little cloud right here. Watch this cloud. It both expands and contracts as it's passing, and it's underneath it. And you'll notice that the disk itself is not changing its shape. So it expands out slightly, bends back slightly. It's bent in, contracted. Now it expands out here quite a bit. Then it contracts again. Then it expands again. I'll go back and forth and do that here. And the disk is not changing. I had no idea why it was expanding and contracting, but when I discussed this with Mark D'Antonio, it's a pulsating part of the mechanism of the propulsion system. And it's the pulsating that's causing the expansion and contraction visually. So I've got, I put them side by side so you can see them here. Now there's a second lensing event. There's actually three, but I'm highlighting two in here. The three that stand out, or the two of the three that stand out best. And it's this spot right here. You can see it's here, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's contracted in some more. And then you can see a change there. It's a little hard on this monitor to see those changes, but I'll go back here. But it's this spot here that really contracts. Contracts some more, moves back to the right slightly, moves back to the right slightly, contracts to the left slightly, contracts more to the left slightly, then goes to the right slightly, more to the right slightly. So yeah. Now there's one more video here. This one was captured in South America.
¿Va por abajo o por arriba o qué? Vea todo el mundo viéndolo.
What I liked about this video, it's a Saturn-shaped craft, very
Mike,
similar to the one that I
eso?
saw when I was 6.
Y a vuelta y todo.
This is important here. There's light fixtures here. These light fixtures you can use as a test to see if everything's changing around them, which they weren't. So here it is here. It's passing in front of the first cloud that's a vertical. As it gets close, you can see the cloud is moving beside it. So I'll go back. So it's moving to the left in response to the craft in front of it. Now there's a second part of the video that's more interesting here. And as it moves in, you can see down here, this cloud is expanding and contracting, just like the first F-22 video, expanding and contracting as it's moving past. It wasn't a one-off in that F-22 video. This one also shows the same exact behavior with the clouds behind it. Okay, so Luis Elizondo and his ATIP team had identified the 5 observables, they called it. Anti-gravity, instant acceleration, hypersonic speeds, low observability, and transmedium travel. What I've shown you today, I am actually calling the 6th observable. And the definition I gave it was gravitational lensing, Einstein rings. Some daylight close-range UFOs may display visually distorting background objects such as buildings, landscapes, mountains, clouds, and or complex discolorations of background objects directly surrounding a UFO structural outline. Simply put another way, it's how to identify the UAP propulsion. Turns out, unlike what the debunkers say, it is obeying the laws of physics, as defined by Einstein and Alcubierre. There are certain conditions that must be met to be able to spot it. It must be a daylight or an IR video. There's not enough light at a nighttime video, even as passing in front of stars, to be able to determine. We must have a clear image of the UAP and the background. It must be in front of non-moving objects. So if it's for hurricane force winds in front of clouds, that's not going to help us. Preferably straight or structured shapes. The UAP must be traveling at slow to medium speeds. One of the UAP released by the Aero group moved across the screen so very quickly there was no ability to capture any lensing events. It's got to be a slower speed. And then the lensing effect must be large enough for a definition. If you're seeing 2 or 3 pixels change, that's probably some aberration in the compression. We're talking much more than that to be able to define it as something that is a gravitational lensing effect. So, alternate explanations. Could it be heat bubbles? Well, the IR video shows that at points it was cold. So, there was another IR video I looked at, but I didn't include this here. Could it be a camera lens or window defect? If it was a camera lens defect, it would be centralized to one part of the screen, and it wasn't. It was all over the screen. If it was a window defect, the UAP itself would also be affected, not just the cloud underneath it. So no defects would be localized. Video compression aberrations. The area, in effect, is too large for a compression algorithm aberration, is a CGI hoax. Well, the first videos were government released. The first one was government released, so its authenticity is not that worried about. But more importantly, nobody knew about this sixth observable. Nobody knew that we were supposed to be seeing these lensing effect curvatures underneath or around the UAP. So nobody knew to fake this. So any video from before today that shows a lensing effect, we can confidently say was not CGI hoax because nobody knew they were supposed to do this. The last one was, and I was asked about this, chromatic aberration. Now, you can see here, this is the video, a still from a video. What chromatic aberration is it causes a halo effect around dark objects against a light background. And so some people will see this halo around a UAP in a photo and go, well, I didn't see that with my eyes, therefore it must be the Einstein ring, and it's not. I adjusted the color here. You can see the lampposts and the sign have it as well. So this is an effect of the camera. The cheaper the camera, the more likely this little halo effect happens, this discoloration. But see, so this is the counter argument that I'm expecting to get on this. But in this particular video, the lady said she could actually see the aura around the craft with her eyes and on the camera. But unfortunately, with debunkers, your word is useless. It doesn't worth anything. And this aura is easy to fake in any CGI or even, it's just, even Adobe, you just put an outline on it and it shows up like that. So but this is what chromatic aberration is. When light passes through the center of a lens, it's unaffected. But when it's passing through the outside, it actually gets prismed, like the triangular prism you're used to seeing, creating a rainbow effect. And so it gets bent. So the farther away from the center of the screen, the more likely it is to be affected. So, and then this is from Adobe, how they showed it. You get this rainbow effect. And on a white background, or a light background, it happens to lighten up, as you saw there. So in astronomy, now I'm getting to my conclusion, gravity is created by objects bending space, fabric, time, but astronomers don't know how. In astronomy, the dark matter has been detected in the photographs. All particle detection tests have failed to date, and astronomers don't know what dark matter is. In astronomy, dark energy has been detected using telescopes. The universe is accelerating, not decelerating. That's what they originally thought it was supposed to be doing. And the acceleration is non-uniform. Everywhere they look, it's accelerating at a different rate. And they don't know why. So in astronomy, it's okay to prove something exists without having any clue of what it is or how it works. And they always give this label dark in front of it. Lately, there's stars way off that James Webb is seeing. They're calling dark stars, even though you can see them. So conclusion. 6 observable identifies UAP propulsion, which bends space-time. It is okay not to know exactly how that bending occurs. I'm calling it a dark propulsion system. And this has been achieved by someone. Who that someone is, we don't know. Is it Russians? Is it Chinese? Is it NHI? We don't know. Now it's up. Now, no scientific experiment from outside a UAP will show the scientists what's inside. No matter how many lensing events we see on videos, if we pulled up 100 of them and said, here's 100 videos showing these gravitational lensing events, we still won't know what's inside. Scientists need to talk to people who've seen the inside, experiencers like myself. We need to get past that stumbling block of, we can't talk to experiencers. It's anecdotal. I read an article a little while ago where they were saying only 10,000 people in the world claim to be experiencers. Well, Whitley Strieber received 500,000 letters before the internet arrived of people claiming to have their own experiences. The numbers are far greater than the doubters will admit to. All right, this brings the last little bit, the Fermi paradox. Fermi paradox, contradiction between the seemingly high likelihood for the emergence of extraterrestrial intelligence and the lack of evidence for its existence. The paradox has two broad forms. Why has Earth not already been visited, and why is there no evidence for extraterrestrial intelligence at all? In science, we could say, oh, all the experiencers, all the videos, all the people reporting UFOs, those are all checks in a game of chess, but we need a checkmate to win. All those are just checks. So does gravitational lensing finally count as a checkmate? Even if I can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt, there's still the question of, well, could it be the Russians or the Chinese? If you look back to World War II and this was going so far back that if you account for that and allow for that, the answer is it's not the Chinese, it's not the Russians. So, time for questions.
Based on your brief, I would have to assume that does not cast shadow on the ground. Is that correct?
No, the UAP would cast a shadow on the ground from, say, the sun if it was a daylight.
Wouldn't it make more sense that it should actually be casting the sun on the ground?
No, it's the bend of light is an object behind it. So shadows, like let's use this as an object, an example object. The light coming from over there would bend underneath and come back up. A shadow is being cast by the sun up here, and the shadow actually might be slightly distorted on the ground, but the videos don't actually show the shadow on the ground from the sun.
Okay, in that direction,
yeah.
if the sun's bending around the UAP, I should see a spot of light on that side.
If one were to pass in front of the sun would be warped by the presence of the UAP.
But when it comes back, shouldn't it make a little spot?
Not necessarily. If it's passing from a building, you'll see the roof line bend slightly, and then it bends back slightly as it passes by.
I'm not talking about the object in front.
Okay.
I'm talking about what happens to the light itself when it rejoins after the lensing effect. It should come back to a spot. It's visible.
The light travels so fast you wouldn't see that spot, even on
Okay. That makes sense, actually.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning. You indicated that your first abduction was random, but yet you had multiple abductions.
Yeah, I assume that I was randomly chosen because I have not been able to identify if either one of my parents was an experiencer. They have no memory of anything. So I think quite possibly I could have just been chosen simply because I lived in a small, isolated village. But that doesn't mean one of my parents didn't have experiences that they don't remember.
What was the purpose of your abductions?
The overall purpose, it's a good question, and how should I put it? I didn't show it in the slides, but in my book, which is coming out in a week or two, I do have a chapter dedicated to when I was introduced to my hybrid child. And so what research has found is they are hybridizing themselves with us, and we don't know why. There's two general theories. One theory is they are future humans. In my book, I did identify there's a paper that came out recently that identified in the human male chromosome, there's about 24 genes that are still functional out of 1,000. They figure in about 1 million years, it'll become non-functional. So in 1 million years, humans might have to come back to a more pristine state to get functional genes to repair the damage time has done. Now, 1 million years is a long time, and we could have changed severely if we had gone out into space and colonized other worlds, we might look different. We might look like small grays. Who knows? The second theory is they are extraterrestrials. And again, time has done damage to them, and they need to repair themselves. And they found the closest genetically compatible, non-spacefaring civilization that they can get genes from to repair damage that has been done by time. Those are the two main theories as to why they're hybridizing themselves. And it seems to be that because we're seeing so many UFOs and so many experiencers, this on their part would be a complete societal effort. It wouldn't be some small faction in the government doing it. Their whole society is basically geared around repairing whatever this damage is by hybridizing themselves with us.
Hi. I was wondering, do you have any ideas or thoughts, theories on how the spacecraft that you've dealt with or other ones, I understand like the propulsionary system underneath and the magnet and everything, but like how, in essence, in layman's terms, how does it go forward, back, side, left? Because in our gravitational field, it's different than past the stratosphere, right? So
yeah.
Like, how does it go forward and back?
Yeah, so basically it's, if you look at if you look at a side view and actually graph out what the spatial curve of the Earth is doing, it kind of diverges away the farther you go up. So it's kind of a lever effect where it's pulling it apart and everything inside gets pushed down. What they're doing is they're creating a momentary bend underneath them, but if they want to move forward, that bend would be slightly to the right and they would float to the left. And then the faster you go, you want to go, the more you rotate it to the right. And so you have enough angled to keep you up at the same elevation, but then you can increase its strength stronger to accelerate faster.
Okay, so like my understanding with just what we have here, it's like throttle propulsion. I guess I'm trying to wrap my mind around how it would go faster.
Okay. It's a thrusting thing. So you want 1G down, and then you add more angle and a stronger thrust, depending on how fast you want to go to the left, or my left, you're right. But basically, it's an angled type of thrusting. It's pretty simple once you understand the engineering part of it. But basically, you always have enough for 1G down and however many Gs forward that direction to counteract going this way.
Thank you for your presentation, by the way. So my question might be more appropriate for the panel, but let me know. I feel like we've talked a lot about almost like the black ones, if you will, like the dark ones. What my experience has been, or what friends have reported to me from like different points throughout the country, is like seeing the flying objects, but it's almost like cloud cloaking.
I've heard of that.
Is that a very different phenomenon?
No.
Do we think that's like that thing, but with a kind of camouflage? Because I wonder if those aren't much, much more prevalent, but then there's that you can see, like I have photos of just like the circles around it where it's like a ship, but it's like cloud. Okay. So I didn't know how that phenomenon fit into what you're talking about.
Okay, I'll give you an example from one of the reports given to me through MUFON that I investigated, and it happened up in Churchill, Manitoba. So the guy was walking along, and he looked up, and he saw a disc above him, directly above him. But there was this really kind of weird, it was displaying something on the other side of the craft. And he saw this radiating set of colors going out, and it was constantly changing its colors. And so the conclusion I came to was this craft was displaying essentially an LCD display on the bottom side. Somehow it had a built-in mechanism to display a video. Now, there was another example from Vancouver Island that happened. These guys were driving along, and they were near a lake, and they saw this classic disc come up out of the lake. Water was pouring off it, dripping off it, and they thought, oh my gosh, look at this disc. And then suddenly, it changed into a Cessna, hovering in midair, absolutely still. The propeller started slowly spinning up, and then it slowly flew off and looking like a Cessna. It would not be too difficult for them to build in some kind of a display using that electroluminescent paint to the outside to create some kind of visual camouflage.
Thank you so much, because I'm also interested in studying like holographic displays and like 3D displays and how our eye perceives them.
Yeah.
And it's funny because sometimes we can see something, but the camera doesn't always capture it the way the human eye visualizes it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another part of like capturing the phenomenon that we've experienced. But the camera, like you said, it's sometimes the lens doesn't flash that quickly or whatnot, and it's already gone.
Yeah.
But I love what you said about how they're in water or they come up out of water, because the friends that have sent me pictures, they were all on lakes or boating. So that's really interesting. Thank you. Thank
You're welcome.
you so much.
Thank you for an amazing presentation.
You're
So
welcome.
I'm curious, I feel like you've got this nailed down. What value, if any, if you see value in collecting more information like this? So let's say you get 20,000 videos and it all shows that. What's next?
That's a really good question. I've identified this effect, but what we need is others to verify it, to look at it and go, okay, it's not the camera lens, it's not an aberration. I need others to look at it. I've contacted others, but everybody's too busy. Like I said, I discovered this about 2 months ago. I figure going forward, others will look at this and say, yes, this is true, or no, well, I figured out how, the lenses cause these effects. But, with such severe distortions or the effect of the discs causing a contraction and expansion on the clouds behind them, below them, I would see them having a hard time. Especially the astronomers would have a hard time because I'm showing them their own work at a macro level. So.
You're probably not going to say this is a good question. It's probably a dumb one. But you referred to the perfection or the how important the shape of the UFO, and when I mean that, I mean the disk, as far as their travel. And yet now we're seeing so many, like the cube and the triangle and these other shapes. Does that affect what's inside and how they?
No. I actually mentioned that into the book. The shape isn't important. So you have you'll have your ring. Now, if you have a small probe, who is what we were calling them, 5-10 feet in diameter, something like that, they'll have one ring in it. A disc will have one ring in it. Those large triangles will have 3 or more rings in them. The long cylindrical craft will probably have a daisy chain of rings. The shape really isn't important. It's all about the number of occupants. That's why those triangles are massively large. I do have a section in my book on triangles, and what I will say is one of my friends saw one at daylight, at just after sunrise, and it dwarfed the neighborhood. I asked him, I went to the house where he grew up, and I asked him, okay, how large was it at arm's length? And I was expecting, a few inches, maybe something like this. And he goes, 15 feet. No, that's not right. I can't reach that far. And he says, you don't understand. That house was blocking that side of it, and that house was blocking that side of it. It was that large. And so I triangulated it. He said it was about just above the trees, 60 feet above the trees at that size. It was on the size of the Mall of America. Forget a Walmart.
Okay. Second question has to do with the hybrid program and what do you have any knowledge as to what they're doing with the hybrids? I mean, I know a lot of people think, well, they're walking among us, but they're putting us back in, putting hybrids back into Earth, or are they taking them other places, or just keeping them on board? And I'm confused about the.
Okay, my understanding is from the research, they've somehow come to a genetic crossroads, a genetic end, and they are struggling with their genetics, and they're trying to revitalize their entire civilization. So basically going forward, their entire civilization over the next however many until this stops is going to be hybridized. The grays that we see are the older ones. There are a number of people who have been experiencing abductions, and instead of grays, it's hybrids that are doing the work.
Where are they housing the hybrids? What are they doing with the hybrids? I understand that they are for the future. I understand that our DNA is going to prolong the lives, improve the genetic makeup of them. I'm just wondering, and I firmly believe that this is what's happening, but what are they doing with them?
They're going to their home. They're going home.
So I'm married to him, and I've got a question that has stumped him when we've been writing the book. Okay, so my question is, what is the positive outcome or positive effects of you being an experiencer? Because they did choose you, and they have chosen your family. It's a family study.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Every cloud has its silver lining. In my case, I learned from them to be very environmentally conscious, and I take that forward in my work, and I try and get my work to be environmentally conscious, and it has worked. Now, of course, I've had some negative side effects of all of this, but definitely I would say I am a more worldly person than I would have been otherwise if I had not had these experiences.
Just want to say thank you for sharing those experiences. We really appreciate that.
Oh, good.
You mentioned how you spoke to Mark D'Antonio about propulsion systems. Could you possibly give us a little information on how you two differ and how you two may be the same?
He is about how it works, and I am about what we are seeing. So it's not important critically to me exactly how it works. What I've identified is what does it look like when it's operating. So it's kind of like we're meshing each other, we're complementing each other, but we're not stepping on each other's toes and competing with each other. It doesn't matter if it's the Alcubierre or the KK Gravitons to me. It's either one of those two, or maybe it's a third possibility. I don't know, and I'm not going to look into the hows. I'm just going to concentrate on what we are seeing.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Two-part question. Can we see the gravitational lensing with our eyes?
If it's moving really slow, like just hovering slightly, and it moves in front of a building across the street, you should be able to see it. But you have to know at that time, but you're going to be overwhelmed by the whole image of the UFO, and you'll probably forget to look at the lensing.
When they do their fake alien invasion with the holographs, was that something we should look for? That's what I'm going to look for now anyway. I'm going to, okay, is this real or are they faking this? What do you think? Or do you think they would include it?
As in Hollywood faking it?
Well, I mean, there are some people out there who are saying that, you could see like a great white just, jumping in an ocean. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the hoaxers, essentially. From this point forward, now that I've brought this out, the dedicated hoaxers will probably do that. That's why I said earlier, any video recorded up till today, we can look at it and go, okay, this is probably an event. If it was recorded a year from now and someone's learned about this event, this lensing stuff, it'll be questioned. Because did they fake it knowing this? But anything before today, we can confidently say no hoaxer knew to fake it.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Great talk.
I guess that's all the questions.